My dad booted me from the $26,000 Dubai trip I paid for just to hand my spot to my brother's leeching fiancée. He claimed she deserved it more. Huge mistake. I made sure they'd never forget what followed. Imagine pouring your heart, soul, and every last penny into creating the dream vacation of a lifetime for your family. A lavish, no expenses spared trip to Dubai. Now, imagine your own father calling you up to tell you, point blank, you're no longer welcome on the trip you paid for. That's exactly what happened to me. They wanted my spot for my brother Michael's fiancée, Natalie. The shock, the anger, the sheer betrayal, it hit me like a physical blow. My name is Alexandra, and at 32, I've always prided myself on my independence and my unwavering devotion to my family. I spent years climbing the corporate ladder as a senior financial manager in Chicago, finally reaching a place where I had stability and could enjoy a bit of luxury. I bought my own home, paid off my student loans, and meticulously built my investment portfolio. Everything I had, I earned through relentless hard work. But to understand why this felt like such a profound stab in the back, you need to know my family. My father, John, is a 62-year-old retired military officer. Our home growing up was run like a platoon, strict rules, high expectations, and his approval was a prize I constantly sought but rarely won. My mother, Diane, 60, was always the family's quiet peacekeeper, rarely challenging my father, even when it was clear she disagreed. Their marriage was traditional, with his word being law. Then there's Michael, my older brother, 35. He's always been the golden child, despite never quite finding his footing. After dropping out of college twice, he bounced between sales jobs, never holding one for long. Yet, in my parents' eyes, especially my father's, Michael could do no wrong. If he barely passed a class, Dad would praise his effort. If I achieved straight A's with one B, I'd be questioned why it wasn't perfect. This pattern haunted us into adulthood. When Michael needed thousands to pay off credit card debt after a spontaneous Las Vegas trip, my parents dipped into their retirement savings. When I needed a small loan for an unexpected medical bill in my first year out of college, my father lectured me about financial responsibility and told me to figure it out. And I did. I picked up extra shifts, ate ramen for a month, and made it work. The disparity was stark, a constant ache, but I learned to build my own life, fiercely independent. I worked my way through college and grad school, laden with loans, while my parents funded Michael's unfinished attempts at higher education. Despite this uneven playing field, I always remained close to them, visiting twice a month for Sunday dinners, always checking in. I yearned to be the daughter they'd be proud of, even if they rarely voiced it. As my career flourished, my financial stability inadvertently turned me into the family's resource. When their roof needed replacing, I contributed $8,000. When Michael was between jobs, I quietly sent him $2,000 for rent, a gesture he never acknowledged. It was around then that Michael started dating Natalie. She's 28, works part-time at a boutique, though from Michael's stories, she calls in sick more often than not. From our first meeting, a chill ran down my spine. Her politeness felt calculated. My gut screamed that I'd seen that look before, the sudden glint in someone's eyes when they realize you have access to money. She quickly identified my parents as the purse strings, becoming their shadow, calling them Mom and Dad within weeks. She lavished compliments on my mother's cooking, listened to my father's military stories with what appeared to be rapt attention, asking all the right ego-boosting questions. With me, however, she was different. After learning my profession, her interest in me cooled entirely, replaced by pointed questions about my salary, my home, my vacations. When I was vague, she simply moved on. She seamlessly inserted herself into every family gathering. If I planned dinner with my parents, suddenly Michael and Natalie were there. If I hoped for one-on-one time with my mom, Natalie would coincidentally drop by with a small gift or an urgent question. I tried to be generous, to give her the benefit of the doubt, but the pattern became undeniable. Natalie was only interested in the material benefits of being connected to our family. She coveted my mother's jewelry, hinting she always wanted pieces like that. She admired my father's car, mentioning Michael promised to buy her one someday, all while looking directly at my father. Michael, utterly infatuated, seemed completely oblivious, showering her with expensive gifts despite his precarious finances. I suspected my parents were funding this newfound generosity, but I held my tongue. I still loved my brother and desperately wanted to maintain some kind of relationship. And despite the decades of uneven treatment, I still deeply cared for my parents. I wanted to give them something truly special, a heartfelt thank you. That's when the idea for the Dubai trip was born. It was during a quiet moment at work, reviewing executive travel reports, that I remembered my parents' 40th wedding anniversary was approaching. 40 years. An incredible milestone, even with our complicated family dynamics, deserved an extraordinary celebration. They had never traveled outside the U.S. My father dismissed international travel as too expensive and complex, while my mother, though quietly longing to see the world, never pushed the issue. I wanted to give them an experience they would never forget, a complete escape from their suburban Illinois lives. Dubai felt perfect. Luxury, culture, architectural marvels, desert adventures. I pictured my mother's face at the top of the Burj Khalifa, my father, who'd served in the Middle East but never truly experienced its culture, savoring traditional food. I even imagined sharing this adventure with Michael, hoping it might bridge the distance between us. I dove into planning. Every lunch break, every evening after work, I meticulously crafted the perfect itinerary. First class all the way, a true once-in-a-lifetime experience. 5-star hotels, private desert safaris, exclusive dining, VIP access to every attraction. The total cost was staggering, nearly $26,000 for the 4 of us. It would drain almost my entire annual bonus and a significant chunk of my savings. But I decided it was worth it. I set up a separate savings account, took on extra projects for performance bonuses, and cut back on everything, making coffee at home, packing lunches, postponing my own home renovations. For 18 painstaking months, I saved and planned. I worked with a high-end travel agency, booking first-class Emirates flights, rooms at the iconic Burj Al Arab, a private desert dinner with entertainment, a guided tour of the Sheikh Zayed Grand Mosque, a private yacht cruise around Palm Jumeirah, and VIP access to the Burj Khalifa observation deck. I even scheduled a personal shopping experience at the Dubai Mall. Each booking, each payment, filled me with joy, fueled by the imagined delight on my parents' faces. When everything was finally arranged, I unveiled the surprise at a Sunday dinner. Elaborate, gold-embossed invitation cards placed beside their dessert plates. My mother opened hers first, her hands trembling. Her eyes, glistening with tears, met mine. "Alexandra, is this real?" she whispered, speechless. I nodded, beaming. "Happy anniversary, Mom and Dad." I wanted to do something truly special. My father, ever the skeptic, studied his, looking for a catch. "This must have cost a fortune," he grumbled. "Don't worry about it, Dad," I assured him. "It's my gift to you both. You deserve it." Michael's eyes were wide as he read his. "First-class flights? The Burj Al Arab? Alex, are you serious?" "Completely," I confirmed. "We leave in 6 months. I've cleared my work schedule, even spoke to your boss, Michael. Everything is arranged." My mother got up and hugged me tight. "Thank you, sweetheart. This is the most wonderful gift." Even my father, in his reserved way, seemed genuinely moved. "Very generous of you, Alexandra." "Thank you." It was one of those rare, precious moments where I felt truly appreciated, especially by my father. The raw gratitude in his eyes made every sacrifice worth it. Then the doorbell rang. My mother answered, returning with Natalie, who claimed she was crashing for dessert because Michael mentioned the apple pie. As she settled beside Michael, she spotted the invitations. "What's this? Are we celebrating something?" Michael, bursting with excitement, spilled all the details of the luxurious trip I had planned. Natalie's expression transformed, eyes widening, a hungry smile spreading. "Dubai. Oh my God, that sounds amazing," she gushed, clutching Michael's invitation. "I've always wanted to go. All those Instagram influencers are always posting from Dubai. The shopping there is supposed to be incredible. The way she emphasized Instagram sent a fresh wave of unease through me. I could already picture her plotting social media content. But I pushed it down. She wasn't invited, so it wasn't my problem. Throughout dessert, she peppered me with questions: length of stay, attractions, shopping time, special experiences. With each answer, her expression grew more intense, a disturbing mix of longing and calculation. As I left that night, Natalie gave me an uncomfortably tight hug. "You're so generous to do this for your family, Alexandra," she purred. "Michael is lucky to have such a caring sister." Her tone felt disingenuous, but I just smiled politely. Driving home, that vague unease persisted. In retrospect, it was the first tremor before the earthquake. 2 months later, Michael called with news. He and Natalie were engaged. He proposed on a weekend trip with a diamond ring I later learned was bought with money borrowed from our parents. "That's wonderful, Michael," I said, trying to sound enthusiastic despite my rising concerns about Natalie. "I'm happy for you both." "Thanks, sis," he replied, genuinely excited. No date yet, but Natalie's already talking venues and dresses. You know how women get about wedding planning. I let that slide and asked about our parents' reaction. "They're thrilled." Mom cried, and Dad actually hugged me. "Can you believe it? They're having us over for dinner this Sunday to celebrate. You'll come, right?" I agreed, though my feelings were a swirling mix of wanting my brother to be happy and deep doubts about Natalie's motives. Sunday arrived. I drove to my parents' house with champagne, a traditional, neutral engagement gift. My parents' house was a hub of celebration. My mother had prepared an elaborate meal, my father had bought flowers, and Michael and Natalie sat like visiting royalty, accepting congratulations. Natalie flashed her ring to my mother, who appropriately oohed and awed. "Alexandra!" Natalie exclaimed, embracing me. "So glad you made it. Look at my ring. Isn't it gorgeous?" Michael did so well. I politely admired the ring, noting its 2-carat size, far beyond Michael's means. My suspicions were confirmed when I noticed my mother wearing costume jewelry instead of her usual gold. She'd probably pawned pieces to help Michael buy that ring. During dinner, the conversation inevitably drifted to Dubai, now just 8 weeks away. Natalie leaned forward eagerly as my mother discussed her packing plans. "I've been researching Dubai fashion," Natalie interjected. "For the desert safari, you'll want light layers, but it gets cold at night. And for the Burj Al Arab, we should definitely dress up. I'm thinking my new red dress, the one with the gold accents." The casual "we" hit me like a splash of ice water. My blood ran cold. I glanced at Michael, who was suddenly intensely interested in his plate. My father simply nodded along, unfazed by Natalie's presumption. I cleared my throat, trying to keep my voice steady. "Natalie, I'm not sure if Michael explained, but the trip is for our parents' anniversary. I've made reservations for 4 people: Mom, Dad, Michael, and myself." A heavy silence descended. Natalie's smile froze, her eyes narrowing imperceptibly. My father deliberately set down his fork, a motion I recognized from childhood as a prelude to a storm. "Alexandra," he said slowly, "now that Michael and Natalie are engaged, don't you think it would be appropriate to include her in our family celebration?" My stomach clenched. "Dad, I'd love to include Natalie, but the trip has been planned and paid for with 4 people in mind. All the reservations, the hotel, the private tours, everything is arranged for 4. Adding a 5th person now would be incredibly complicated and expensive. Surely you could make some adjustments," he pressed. "Natalie is going to be part of our family now." My mother, silent until now, tentatively spoke up. "The trip is Alexandra's gift to us, John. She's put a lot of thought and money into planning it." I shot her a grateful look, but my father waved her off. "Alexandra is doing very well in her career. I'm sure the additional cost would not be a burden for her." Michael finally looked up from his plate. "Natalie has never been out of the country before. She doesn't even have a passport yet, but we're expediting it. This would be such an amazing first international experience for her." Natalie reached over and squeezed my father's hand. "I would never want to impose, John. It's just that Michael has told me so much about this trip, and it sounds like such a special family time. I'd love to be included, but I completely understand if it's not possible. Her tone was conciliatory, but her eyes, fixed on my father, conveyed a different, more demanding message. I took a deep breath, fighting to stay calm. The issue isn't just the additional cost, though that's certainly a factor. The Burj Al Arab suites are configured for specific numbers of guests. The desert dinner is a private booking for 4. The first-class airfare alone for another person would be over $5,000 at this point. And that's if we could even get a seat on the same flights. So you're saying no? My father's voice had that familiar, dangerous edge. I'm saying it would be very difficult to change everything at this point, I clarified. Maybe Natalie and Michael can plan their own trip to Dubai after the wedding. I'd be happy to share my research and recommendations. That's very generous of you, Alexandra, Natalie said with a tight smile. But it wouldn't be the same as experiencing it together as a family, especially for such a special occasion. My father nodded in agreement. Families should be together for important celebrations. The bitter irony of my father suddenly emphasizing family togetherness when it benefited Natalie was not lost on me, but I bit my tongue. This was supposed to be a happy occasion, celebrating Michael's engagement, not a confrontation about decades of favoritism. Let me look into the options, I conceded, though I had no intention of spending thousands more to include someone I was increasingly certain was using my family. The rest of dinner was shrouded in tension. As I prepared to leave, my father walked me to the door, his expression grim. Alexandra, I hope you'll make the right decision about this trip, he said, his tone leaving no doubt what he considered the right decision. I'll do my best, Dad, I replied noncommittally. Driving home, a sense of dread settled deep within me. I knew this issue was far from resolved. In fact, it was just the beginning. A month before our scheduled departure, my father called. We need to talk about the trip, he said, his tone uncharacteristically careful. Can you come by around 6 tonight? I agreed, a sinking feeling in my gut. I hadn't heard much about the trip in recent weeks, which was suspicious given their initial excitement. My attempts to confirm details with my parents had been met with vague responses. When I arrived that evening, my mother barely met my eyes as she let me in. In the living room, my father sat rigidly in his favorite armchair. Michael was on the couch, and beside him, looking surprisingly comfortable, sat Natalie. Alexandra, have a seat, my father said, gesturing to the lone chair opposite him, positioned so I felt like I was facing a firing squad. My heart hammered against my ribs. What's going on? My father cleared his throat. We've been doing some thinking about the Dubai trip, and we've made a decision. The we didn't escape me. This was my gift, yet they were making decisions without me. Your mother and I believe that since Natalie is going to be joining our family, this anniversary trip would be a perfect opportunity for us all to bond and create memories together. I nodded slowly, bracing myself. As I mentioned, adding another person would be complicated, but not impossible. If you all feel strongly, I can look into the additional costs and changes needed. That's not quite what we had in mind, my father continued, looking uncomfortable for the first time. Given the limitations you mentioned about the reservations being for 4 people, we think the most sensible solution is for Natalie to take your place on the trip. The words hit me like a physical blow. My world tilted. I stared at him, certain I had misheard. Excuse me? It makes the most sense, he pressed on, his voice hardening, taking on that authoritative tone that brooked no argument. You've traveled internationally before. Natalie never has. This would be a new experience for her, whereas for you, it would just be another trip. All the air seemed to vanish from the room. My mother stared at her hands, twisting her wedding ring. Michael had the decency to look somewhat ashamed, though not enough to speak. Natalie sat with a faint, chilling smile playing on her lips, her expression poorly concealed triumph. Dad, I finally managed, my voice barely a whisper. I paid for this trip. I planned every detail. This was my gift to you and Mom for your anniversary. And we appreciate that, he replied quickly. But gifts, once given, belong to the recipient. Your mother, and I would like to share this experience with our son and his future wife. The casual cruelty of his statement left me breathless. I looked to my mother, begging for support with my eyes, but she remained silent, her gaze fixed on the floor. Natalie deserves to go more than you do, my father added, delivering the most painful blow yet. She's about to become part of this family. This trip would mean so much more to her than it would to you. Tears pricked at my eyes, but I refused to let them fall. I've been planning this for over a year and a half. I worked extra hours, gave up my own vacation plans, and spent nearly $26,000 to create this experience for our family. And we'll pay you back for your portion, my father said dismissively, as if that addressed the gaping wound. Michael has calculated your share would be around $6,000. We can write you a check right now. I laughed, a bitter, incredulous sound. $6,000, Dad? The first-class airfare alone is more than that per person. Not to mention the hotel suites, the private tours, the special experiences I arranged. Michael finally spoke up, looking directly at me. Alex, don't be selfish about this. Family helps family. You know Natalie, and I can't afford a trip like this on our own. You have a great job and can go to Dubai anytime you want. Selfish. I repeated, my voice rising despite my efforts to stay calm. I spent my own money I worked hard for, to give our parents a special anniversary gift. How exactly does that make me selfish? It's selfish to deny Natalie this opportunity just because you want to go, Michael shot back. You always have to be the center of attention, don't you? Always showing off how successful you are, how much money you make. His words were so hypocritical, so utterly divorced from reality, that for a moment I couldn't even respond. I had spent years quietly supporting this family, receiving little recognition and even less gratitude, and now I was being accused of showing off. Michael, I have never, Alexandra. My father cut in, his tone making it clear he considered the matter settled. Our decision is final. Natalie will be going in your place. We can discuss the financial details later if you are unhappy with the amount we have offered. Natalie, who had watched this exchange with barely concealed satisfaction, finally spoke, her voice oozing feigned sincerity. Alexandra, I want you to know how much this means to me. I never had the opportunity to travel growing up, and sharing this experience with Michael and my future in-laws is something I will cherish forever. I'm so grateful to be included in such a special family moment. Her performance was flawless, her eyes wide with false sincerity. I could almost believe her, if not for the smug smile she couldn't quite suppress. My mother finally looked up, her expression pained. Alexandra, it's fine, Mom, I interrupted, unable to bear hearing her make excuses for this betrayal. I understand exactly what's happening here. I stood up, my legs trembling beneath me. I hope you all enjoy the trip. It's a gift, after all, and apparently, gifts once given belong to the recipient to do with as they please. Don't be dramatic, Alexandra, my father said with a frown. This is a practical solution to a simple problem. There was no problem until you created one, I replied, my voice finding a new strength. The problem is that you have always treated Michael differently than me. The problem is that you see nothing wrong with taking something I worked hard for and giving it to someone else because you think they deserve it more. The problem is that I am supposedly part of this family too, but I am being pushed aside the moment someone new comes along. My father's expression hardened. That is enough. I will not be spoken to this way in my own home. Fine, I said, grabbing my purse. Then I'll leave. As I headed for the door, Natalie called after me, Alexandra, please don't leave angry. We're going to be sisters soon. I'd hate for this to come between us. I turned back to look at her, at all of them. You know what, Natalie? We are not going to be sisters. You may marry my brother. You may charm my parents. But you and I will never be family. Not after this. I walked out, closing the door firmly behind me. In my car, the dam finally broke. Great, heaving sobs racked my body. The betrayal cut deep, not just from my father, whose favoritism I had long ago accepted, but from my mother, who had always at least pretended to love us equally. Even from Michael, who despite our differences, was still my brother, the person who had shared my childhood. How could he not understand what this meant to me? As I drove home, the crushing sadness began to give way to a slow, burning anger. I had spent thousands of dollars, countless hours planning, and made numerous personal sacrifices to create this special experience. And with a single conversation, it had been ripped from me and given to someone who had done nothing to earn it, someone who was clearly using my family for her own benefit. By the time I reached my house, a fierce resolve had hardened within me. They may have removed me from the trip, but I still had control over the reservations. And if my family thought they could treat me this way without consequences, they were about to learn a very expensive lesson. I cried until there were no tears left. The betrayal felt like a physical wound, a hollow ache in my chest. Around midnight, I called my best friend, Sarah, who answered despite the late hour. "They did what?" she exclaimed after I explained. "Your own father kicked you off a trip you paid for, and they expect you to just accept that?" Apparently, I choked out. "My dad actually said Natalie deserves to go more than I do. After everything I've done for them, after all the times I've helped them financially, this is how they treat me. Alex, I love you, but you've got to stop letting your family walk all over you," Sarah said firmly. "They've been taking advantage of your generosity for years, and now they've crossed a line that should never be crossed. What am I supposed to do? The trip is already paid for. If I make a fuss, I'll just be seen as the difficult one as usual." Sarah was quiet for a moment. "Don't let them get away with this. You planned this trip. You paid for it. The reservations are in your name, right?" "Yes," I said, a flicker of an idea sparking. "Everything was booked through my travel agent under my name." "Then you still have control over those reservations," Sarah pointed out. "They can't just decide to remove you without your cooperation." A plan began to solidify in my mind. "You're right," I said, my voice gaining strength. "The bookings are all in my name. I'm the primary contact for everything." "Exactly," Sarah said, and I could hear the smile in her voice. "I'm not saying you should cancel everything, because that might be too harsh. But maybe there are some adjustments that could be made." We talked for another hour, exploring various options. By the time we hung up, my tears had dried, replaced by a cold, deliberate resolve. I wouldn't cancel their trip entirely, that felt too vindictive. But I would ensure that the lavish, luxury experience I had planned and paid for was significantly, irrevocably altered. The next morning, I called my travel agent, Melissa, who had helped me plan every detail. I explained the situation, maintaining a professional distance and omitting the most painful parts. "I need to make some changes to the Dubai booking," I said, once the pleasantries were out of the way. "Unfortunately, I won't be joining the trip, and we need to adjust the reservations accordingly." "I'm sorry to hear that, Alexandra," Melissa replied, sounding genuinely disappointed for me. "What kind of changes do you have in mind?" "First," I said, my voice steady, "I need to change the flight bookings. Instead of first class on Emirates, I would like to switch everyone to economy class." "That's quite a downgrade," Melissa noted. "Are you sure?" "Positive," I confirmed. "Also, I need to cancel the reservation at the Burj Al Arab. Instead, please book 2 standard rooms at the City Seasons Hotel." I paused, referencing the list of budget hotels I'd researched the night before. "It's in Dera, I believe." "That's on the other side of the city from all the attractions you had planned to visit," Melissa pointed out carefully. "And it's a 3-star hotel, not the luxury experience you were aiming for." "That's fine," I assured her. "I also need to cancel all the private tours and experiences I had booked. The desert dinner, the yacht cruise, the VIP access at the Burj Khalifa, all of it." "Alexandra," Melissa said cautiously, "these changes will significantly alter the trip experience. Are you absolutely certain this is what you want to do?" "I am," I said firmly. "My circumstances have changed, and these adjustments are necessary. Please also cancel the airport transfers and the personal shopping experience." Melissa sighed, but began making notes. "What about basic transportation around Dubai? Do you want me to arrange anything for them?" I considered this. I didn't want to strand my family completely in an unfamiliar city. That would be cruel and potentially dangerous. "Please arrange for a basic tour package. Something that includes transportation to the main attractions, but without any VIP elements or private guides." "I can do that," she confirmed. "Will you be rebooking your portion of the trip for a later date? The refund for the downgraded elements could be applied to a solo trip for you." This was something I had already considered, of course. Yes, I said. I've been thinking about visiting the Maldives. Could you see what kind of upgrade I could get for a one-person trip with the difference from these changes? The Maldives is beautiful, Melissa said, her tone warming. I'd be happy to put together some options for you. With the difference from downgrading the Dubai trip, you could have a very luxurious experience there. We spent the next hour going through all the details, canceling, rebooking, reallocating funds. Every cancellation felt like a tiny victory, a reclaiming of my power. When we were finished, the Dubai trip had been transformed from a first-class, luxury experience to a basic international vacation. Meanwhile, I had secured myself a week at an overwater bungalow in the Maldives, complete with private butler service, daily spa treatments, and gourmet dining. All the changes have been processed, Melissa confirmed. The new itineraries will be emailed to you shortly. Do you want me to send the updated Dubai itinerary to your family members directly? No, I decided after a moment of consideration. I'll handle communicating the changes to them. But I had no intention of doing so. Let them discover the truth when they arrived at the airport, expecting first-class treatment and champagne, only to be directed to the economy check-in desk. Let them realize what had happened when they arrived in Dubai and were taken to a basic hotel miles from the attractions instead of one of the most luxurious hotels in the world. A tiny part of me felt guilty about the deception, particularly where my mother was concerned. But then I remembered her silence, her unwillingness to stand up for me even in that extreme situation. The guilt faded, replaced by a sharp sense of justice. I wasn't canceling their trip. They would still get to go to Dubai, still get to see the sights and experience a new country together. They just wouldn't be doing it in the lavish style I had originally planned. The difference would go toward my own well-deserved vacation, a small compensation for the hurt they had caused me. As I hung up with Melissa, a huge weight lifted from my shoulders. For perhaps the first time in my life, I had stood up for myself against my family's unfair treatment. It wasn't a perfect solution, and I knew there would be fallout when they discovered what I had done. But at that moment, I couldn't bring myself to care. They had made their choice, and now I had made mine. The day of the Dubai trip arrived. I hadn't spoken to any of my family members since that fateful evening I was removed. My father had called once, leaving a message about finalizing the financial arrangements for my portion of the trip cost, but I hadn't returned his call. My mother had texted a few bland messages that carefully avoided mentioning the elephant in the room. Michael hadn't reached out at all. I knew exactly when their flight was scheduled to depart, and I imagined them arriving at the airport, dressed in their best, expecting to be ushered into the first-class lounge for champagne and gourmet snacks. Instead, they would be directed to the economy check-in line, standing with the masses, their boarding passes showing seats at the back of the plane, not the spacious first-class pods I had originally booked. I was sitting at my desk at work, pretending to focus on a spreadsheet while actually watching the clock, when my phone rang. It was my father. I contemplated not answering, but decided it was time to face the music. "Hello, Dad," I said, keeping my voice meticulously neutral. "Alexandra, what the hell is going on?" he demanded, his voice tight with barely controlled rage. "We're at the airport, and they're telling us we have economy tickets, not first class. There must be some mistake." "No mistake," I replied calmly. "I made some adjustments to the reservations." There was a stunned silence. Then my father exploded. "You did what? How dare you change the arrangements without telling us? We look like fools standing here. The check-in agent is looking at us like we're trying to scam our way into first class." "I'm sorry you're embarrassed," I said, not feeling sorry at all. "But as you said, Dad, gifts once given belong to the recipient. You decided to change who was going on this trip, and I decided to change what kind of trip it would be. This is completely unacceptable," he sputtered. "We had an agreement. Did we?" I shot back, a cold, deliberate calm settling over me. I don't recall agreeing to be kicked off my own trip. I don't recall agreeing to have my gift redistributed to someone who, until recently, was a stranger to our family. "Is this about money?" he demanded. "Because if it is, we can discuss increasing the amount we pay you back." "It's not about money, Dad. It's about respect. It's about appreciation for what I tried to do for our family." It's about decades of being treated as less important than Michael, culminating in being told that his girlfriend deserves my place on a trip I paid for more than I do. I could hear my mother in the background, asking what was happening. I heard my father's muffled explanation, then her gasp of surprise. Alexandra, my mother's voice came through the phone, apparently having taken it from my father. Sweetheart, please. This is our anniversary trip. Can't we work this out? I'm sorry, Mom, I said, genuinely regretful that she was caught in the middle of this. But the decision has been made, just like the decision to remove me from the trip was made. You are still going to Dubai. You will still see all the sights. It just won't be the luxury experience I had originally planned. But she began, only to be cut off as my father apparently took the phone back. You listen to me, he said, his voice low and dangerous. You fix this right now, or there will be serious consequences for your relationship with this family. I think those consequences already happened, Dad, I replied, the words feeling like the sweetest I'd ever spoken. When you decided Natalie was more deserving of my place than I was. Enjoy economy class. I hear the middle seats are particularly comfortable. I hung up, my heart racing, but a profound sense of satisfaction flowing through me. I had expected to feel guilty, but instead, I felt empowered. For once, I had refused to be the family doormat. By the way, if you're still with me and on the edge of your seat, make sure to hit that subscribe button. More unbelievable stories and real-life lessons are coming, and you won't want to miss them. Over the next few days, the messages rolled in as each new adjustment was discovered. Michael texted furiously when they arrived at the hotel in Dara, far from the glamorous downtown Dubai where they had expected to stay. What the hell, Alex? This hotel is barely 3 stars, and it's in the middle of nowhere. The rooms are tiny and there's no view. How could you do this to us? I didn't respond. My mother called when they discovered all the special experiences had been canceled. Her voice was tearful as she left a message. Alexandra, I understand you're hurt, but this was supposed to be our anniversary celebration. The desert dinner I was so looking forward to is canceled. The private yacht cruise is gone. Everything special has been removed. Please call me back. We need to talk about this. I didn't return her call. Natalie, predictably, took to social media to express her displeasure, though she was careful not to mention me directly. Her Instagram posts, which had started out enthusiastic about her dream trip to Dubai, quickly devolved into thinly veiled complaints. Not everything is as glamorous as it seems on social media, she wrote beneath a photo of their basic hotel room. But we're making the best of it. #expectationsreality, #travel-fails. Another post showed them in the regular observation deck line at the Burj Khalifa, which I knew would mean hours of waiting instead of the immediate access the VIP tickets would have provided. 3-hour wait just to get to the elevator. Someone didn't plan this very well. #exhausted, #not worth it. The most satisfying message came 4 days into their trip, a voicemail from my father that represented a significant shift in tone from his previous anger. Alexandra, he began, his voice uncharacteristically hesitant. I think I owe you an apology. We didn't realize the extent of what you had planned for this trip. The travel agency showed us the original itinerary when we tried to rebook some of the experiences. I had no idea you had invested so much into making this special. He paused, clearing his throat. What we did was wrong. I see that now. Taking your place on this trip was unfair, especially after all you did to plan it. I should have considered your feelings more carefully. I hope when we return, we can sit down and talk about this. I want to make things right. I saved that message, but still didn't call back. I wanted them to sit with their actions for a while longer. The most unexpected development came in the form of a private message from my mother on the 5th day of their trip. It was longer and more heartfelt than anything she had communicated to me in years. Alexandra, I need to tell you how sorry I am. Not just for this trip situation, but for years of standing by while your father favored Michael. I have always been too afraid to stand up to him, too worried about rocking the boat. But seeing how hurt you are, how justifiably angry, has made me realize that my silence has been a form of betrayal, too. I want you to know that Michael and Natalie have been fighting constantly on this trip. The The stress of the downgraded accommodations, the long waits for attractions, the lack of special treatment Natalie expected, has revealed cracks in their relationship that I suspect were always there. Your father is beginning to see Natalie's true colors as well. She has been complaining nonstop and blaming everyone else for the disappointments. I know this does not excuse what we did to you, but I thought you should know that your absence has been keenly felt. This trip was your vision, your gift, and without you here to share it, it feels hollow. When we return, I hope we can begin to repair our relationship. I have a lot of making up to do, and a lot of changes to make in how I stand up for you in the future. That message brought tears to my eyes, not of sadness, but of profound validation. My mother had finally seen what I had been experiencing for years. It was a small step, but a profoundly significant one. The final update came from Michael, of all people, on the last day of their trip. His message was brief, but spoke volumes. You were right about Natalie. I'm sorry. From social media, I pieced together that Natalie had thrown a full-blown tantrum when Michael refused to buy her an expensive handbag at the Dubai Mall, accusing him of being cheap and ruining her once-in-a-lifetime trip. Apparently, the argument had escalated to the point where my parents had to intervene, and in the process, some ugly truths about Natalie's motivations for being with Michael had come to light. While they were in Dubai, having their considerably less luxurious vacation, I was enjoying my own solitude in the Maldives. My overwater bungalow was everything I had dreamed of: crystal clear waters beneath my private deck, spectacular sunsets viewed from my personal infinity pool. The staff treated me like royalty, remembering my name and preferences from day one. Each morning, I awoke to breakfast delivered by boat to my villa. Each evening, I dined on fresh seafood under the stars. I posted exactly one photo on social media during my trip, a shot of my feet propped up on the deck railing, the turquoise water stretching to the horizon, with the simple caption, "Sometimes you have to choose yourself." #selfcare, #Maldives. I knew my family would see it. I knew they would understand. And for once, I didn't care what they thought about my choices. When I returned from the Maldives, tanned, rested, and with a new sense of self-respect, I found several messages waiting for me. My family had been back from Dubai for a few days, and it seemed they were eager to talk. I took my time responding, allowing myself the space to process my feelings and decide how I wanted to move forward. Eventually, I agreed to meet my father for coffee at a neutral location, a cafe halfway between our homes. When I arrived, I was surprised to find him already there, looking uncharacteristically nervous. He stood when he saw me, an automatic military courtesy that felt strangely formal given our relationship. "Alexandra," he said, pulling out my chair, "thank you for meeting me." I nodded and sat down, waiting for him to speak. He had asked for this meeting. The burden of beginning was on him. "I owe you an apology," he said finally, his voice thick with emotion. What we did with the Dubai trip, was wrong. I see that now. Why did you do it?" I asked, the question that had been burning in me for weeks. Why did you think it was acceptable to take something I had worked so hard for and give it to someone else? He sighed heavily. I could give you excuses about wanting to welcome Natalie into the family, about thinking you would understand because you're always so capable and independent, but the truth is simpler and harder to admit. I haven't been fair to you for a very long time. He looked down at his coffee cup, turning it slowly between his hands. I have always expected more from you than from Michael. When you succeeded, I took it for granted. When you gave, I accepted without proper gratitude. I held you to a higher standard and then resented you for meeting it. His admission stunned me. I had always sensed this dynamic, but never expected him to acknowledge it. The Dubai trip, he continued, was just the most egregious example of a pattern that has existed since you were children. I favored Michael because he struggled, because he needed more support. But in doing so, I failed to appreciate the daughter who never gave me cause for worry, who always exceeded expectations. Tears pricked at my eyes, but I blinked them away. Do you know how much it hurt when you said Natalie deserved to go more than I did? After all I had done to create that experience for our family. I do now, he said quietly. I don't expect you to forgive me immediately, or maybe ever. But I want you to know that I see what I have done, and I am committed to changing. Your mother and I have had many long conversations about this since we returned. She has helped me see things I was blind to before. We talked for over 2 hours, covering years of accumulated hurts and misunderstandings. It wasn't a magical resolution, not a Hollywood moment where all was instantly forgiven, but it was a beginning, a fragile foundation upon which we could potentially build a healthier relationship. As for Michael, the Dubai trip had indeed been a reckoning. Natalie's true colors had shown themselves vividly under the stress of disappointment. Her complaints about the basic hotel, the long lines, the lack of VIP treatment, had revealed a materialism and entitlement that could no longer be ignored. Their constant fighting had culminated in a public argument at the Dubai Mall that left my mother in tears and my father seething with anger. 2 weeks after their return, Michael ended the engagement. Natalie, predictably, did not take it well. She demanded to keep the ring, threatened to tell everyone Michael was abusive. He wasn't, and finally resorted to calling me, bizarrely, claiming that I owed her compensation for ruining her trip. I listened to her rant for precisely 1 minute before cutting her off. Natalie, this conversation is over. Do not contact me or my family again. I blocked her number and social media accounts immediately afterward. My relationship with my mother improved more quickly than the one with my father. She reached out regularly, not just with superficial check-ins, but with genuine interest in my life and thoughts. She began standing up to my father on small issues, finding her voice after decades of deferring to him. It was a slow process, but I could see her making a sincere effort to change patterns that had been established over 40 years of marriage. Michael and I had the most complicated road to recovery. He had been raised to expect preferential treatment, to believe his needs and wants should come before mine. Breaking that mindset wasn't easy for either of us. We had several false starts, conversations that devolved into old accusations and defenses. But gradually, as he processed the lessons from his relationship with Natalie and saw the changes our parents were making, he began to shift his perspective. 6 months after the Dubai fiasco, he invited me to dinner and offered a genuine apology, not just for the trip, but for years of accepting advantages at my expense. I never thanked you for helping with my rent last year, he admitted, or for any of the other times you've bailed me out. I took it for granted that you would always be there to help, without ever considering how I could support you in return. For me, the entire experience was transformative. I learned to set clear boundaries with my family, to assert my needs and expect them to be respected. I stopped automatically saying yes to requests for financial help and started evaluating each situation on its merits. Sometimes I still said yes, but it was a choice now, not a foregone conclusion. I also began to examine my own patterns of people-pleasing and seeking validation through sacrifice. With the help of a therapist, I explored why I'd been so willing to spend enormous sums of money and effort to create perfect experiences for people who often showed little appreciation. I learned to value myself enough to expect reciprocity in my relationships, both within my family and beyond. The Dubai trip that never was became a turning point in our family dynamic. It forced issues that had simmered beneath the surface for decades to finally boil over, creating an opportunity for honest conversation and real change. It was painful, messy, and at times deeply hurtful, but ultimately necessary for all of us to grow. My father still occasionally slips into old patterns of favoring Michael or taking me for granted. My mother sometimes falls back into her peacekeeper role rather than standing firm. Michael has moments of entitlement that echo our childhood dynamic. And I still find myself tempted to overextend myself to earn their approval. But now we catch ourselves and each other. We talk about these patterns openly, instead of pretending they don't exist. For my parents' 41st anniversary, we took a much more modest trip together, a long weekend at a lakeside cabin a few hours from their home. We cooked meals together, played board games, and had conversations that would have been impossible a year earlier. It wasn't perfect, but it was authentic in a way the Dubai trip never could have been. If you're watching this and recognizing similar patterns in your own family, know that change is possible, but it requires courage, honesty, and often a catalyst that forces everyone to confront uncomfortable truths. Sometimes, you have to make difficult choices to protect yourself and establish healthy boundaries. It doesn't mean you don't love your family. It means you finally love yourself enough to expect better treatment. So, what about you? Have you ever had to stand up to family members who took advantage of your generosity or disregarded your feelings? How did you handle it? Let me know in the comments below. I really want to hear your stories and what you think about mine. If you found my story helpful or relatable, please give this video a like and subscribe to my channel for more real-life experiences and lessons learned. Share this with someone who might need to hear that it's okay to stand up for themselves, even with family. Thank you for listening. Take care.